Hello, ghosts, goblins, witches, ghouls, crafty friends, whoever it is that's out there. Hello! Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello for the first time. My name is Laura, and I create all of the videos here for Crafty Not Shifty. Today's video is part 2 of an ooky spooky mini Halloween series creating props and decorations for a kind of witch's kitchen window display. Video 1 showed how to make these potion bottles. I'll make sure to put a card and link that in the description. Video 3 is going to show how to make this bubbling potion inside of the cauldron along with a pretty realistic fire that is sat underneath. And video 2, which is today's video, is showing how to make some spellbooks. These were really fun to make. They don't take a lot of craft supplies. Likely you have a lot of what is needed already in your house, which is great. Love an easy craft. And as long as you can work with PVA glue and some books and a couple props, you're going to be fine with this one. So I'll just finish in giving you a little tour of my window display. This is the first year I've created a window display like this. Probably should have done it so it was pointing outside so other people can see it, but here we go. I'm enjoying it and it's not like I'm going anywhere. So these are the 3 books that we're going to make today. I love how they turned out. And I will go ahead and jump into the tutorial and show you each step so you can create your own. If you do, I'd love to see them. You can post them in my Facebook group, Crafty Not Shifty, or tag me on Instagram or Twitter at Crafty Not Shifty. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to speed this whole thing up. Don't worry, I'll try not to talk any faster. That is a comment I get quite a lot, that I talk pretty fast. I've been doing it since I was 3. I'm sorry. So I picked up 3 books from the pound shop. I wanted to make sure I had hardback books that were nice and thick. And yeah, you could totally go ahead and use some that you have in your house. And apologies to these authors, no disrespect. But I picked up these books to be able to turn them into these props. And at least they're not sitting on a shop shelf anymore. I didn't read them first. I feel a little bit guilty. But I've made my peace with it. So these are brand new. They look a little too clean and a little bit too fresh for what I'm after. So I'm taking a product called Tea Stain, and you can definitely DIY this by just brewing some really strong coffee or tea, letting it cool completely, and then painting it onto the edges of your books. But I happen to have this product that a friend picked up for me, shout out Jilly, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint that along the edges of my pages because it gives them that aged, distressed look. Okay, so now we are really going to go in on this distressing. Apologies to any bibliophiles out there that are cringing at the treatment of this book. I promise I usually treat my books much more kindly than this, but these ones were destined to become aged spellbook props, so I'm happy with my decision. So I'm bending and tearing the pages. I'm using a tool here that is really good for creating distressed edges. It's a Tim Holtz tool. I'll try and make sure to list everything in the description below or create a list on my Amazon storefront where you can get all of these products. I did end up switching out to an older pair of scissors because this was great, but it was a little small considering I had 3 books to get through. So I'm just kind of tearing and distressing those edges, I guess. You don't have to do this. The books are mostly going to be seen from the spine and from the front, but I wanted to make sure that the imagery was complete kind of the whole way around these props. So if I end up setting them up differently in coming years, I'm pretty sure this is going to be something that I'll add to. I'll probably make more potion bottles next year and more books and so on. But I went through anyway and really kind of tore this up and made it look aged. And you can see how much thicker the book has gotten when I compare it to one of the originals. And considering these were brand new before I started the project, I'm really pleased with how they turned out. So I added some more of that. I called it Tea Stain before. It's actually not. It's called Tea Dye Varnish. Again, I'll try and link that in the description below or on my Amazon storefront. I'll have a custom shopping list for these books, so you can go ahead and pick up what you want there. So once all three are completely done, it's time to decorate the outsides of the books. The first thing that I'm going to do is try and create an aged textured look using some PVA glue mixed with water. You could use Mod Podge or whatever you have, but this is super inexpensive, just some PVA white glue, could be clear, I guess, it doesn't really matter. Water it down so you've got a nice paste to work with, and then I'm going to go ahead and add a coat all over the front of the book, and I'm going to wrap the book in tissue paper. Whilst I was doing this, I was cracking myself up because I remember all throughout high school, whenever you got a textbook, you were always asked to back the textbook to protect it. I don't know if that's like a UK thing or if they do that everywhere, but we had to kind of wrap it in whatever we wanted. And, some people would use fancy like wallpaper or wrapping paper. Some people would just keep it classic with brown paper. I was thinking how hilarious it would be to create one of these spellbook covers for like your chemistry textbook. I think that would be hilarious. Obviously, you couldn't distress all the edges or stain the paper or anything like that. And you would have to make sure that it was removable without damaging the book. But anyway, something to think about. If anyone does that, let me know because, perfect. I think it would be hilarious. Maybe your school wouldn't. Apologies if anyone tries that and gets in trouble. Anyway, all I'm doing here is wrapping the book with tissue paper. I have 2 sheets of the tissue paper laid down on my desk, and I'm just cutting away the edges and folding it in. Great thing about a Halloween project is nothing has to be neat. You kind of want it to be messy and grungy, so you don't really have to worry too much, which is perfect. And you'll see that as I'm applying the layer of the glue over the top of the tissue paper, really sticking it down to the book, it's getting a whole bunch of creases and lines and little like air pockets and things in it. Some of the bigger ones I am snipping a small hole so I can get the air out, but generally I'm leaving it as textured as possible because that's what we want. We want this to look like a real grungy, witchy book. So you want to go ahead and coat all 3 of your books, both the front, the back and the spine with tissue paper, get it all nice and textured, and then let that glue dry completely. So you're probably going to have to leave it overnight. But then look how great these look. Now it's time to start adding your decorations. I'm only going to decorate the front of one of these books because I'm going to stack them up. So I only really need one of them to have like a 3D decoration on the front. Maybe I'll change that in future years and kind of come back to the other ones and decorate them. But for now, I'm just doing the front of one and I'll do the spines of all 3. And I'm taking some popsicle sticks. You saw me just cutting the edges off there so they would lay flat. I'm going to make like a pentagram design on the front and I'm going to put an eyeball in the middle. I love this. I think I was maybe subconsciously inspired by Hocus Pocus. It definitely has a bit of a vibe of the book from Hocus Pocus. And I'm really pleased with it. So I did go ahead and trim away some of the back of that like ping pong eyeball so it would be much flatter on the book. And now I have my glue gun and my silicone mat for any kind of mess of the glue gun. It is the drip-less glue gun and its name is so true. It doesn't kind of ooze out glue. So I'll try and link that in the description as well. I'll definitely have that on my Amazon store because I know it's available there. But if you're looking for a glue gun that doesn't kind of ooze glue everywhere, that's a really great one. It comes in the large size like I have and also a smaller size that I don't have, but I'm probably going to put on my wish list. So I'm sticking down the popsicle sticks to make the star, and then I decided to stuff the inside of the eyeball with some cotton. That was just so once I put this into storage, if I accidentally put anything on top of it, I've got a better chance of that eyeball not cracking or breaking because there's a little bit of support in there. So again, I just glued that down and used a finger protector just to run my finger around the outside where the glue had oozed out. And now I'm going to go ahead and cover everything in another layer of tissue paper. So these are just the offcuts of the tissue paper, and I totally should have mentioned, if you don't have tissue paper, you could use strips of newspaper as well for this. That would be perfectly fine. You'd probably get even more texture with newspaper because it's a little thicker, but that's great. The more the merrier. So I covered everything in a layer of tissue paper just so it was a little more seamless, and now I'm going to start working on the spines. The hardest part of this was deciding what to call each of the books. I found that the hardest bit. So I've got some little plastic spiders and I'm going to stick them either side of the word potions. And for the lettering, I decided to use these small wooden letters that I happen to have left over from a previous craft project. And real simple. If you don't have these, then you could follow some of the other techniques that I'm going to show you. You could essentially write in glue. If you wanted your handwriting to be a little bit more perfect, you could take your silicone mat, which is partially see-through, it's like semi-transparent, and you could stick that over some printed text so you can trace it with the glue and then stick it on. But I'm just using these wooden letters, and I started with the middle letter for my spacing, which was the I, and then added the rest of them. And again, you don't need to be too careful with this. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit wonky or it's a grungy spell book. It's totally fine. So again, I'm going to coat everything in another layer of tissue paper. These are just the offcuts from when I was backing the books. And you don't need to do this. I just felt like it would give everything the same kind of surface for when I come to paint everything. And it almost makes it look like it's more part of the book than something that's just stuck on. It kind of makes it seem like it's almost part of like I want to say like skin, I guess leather. that's probably, it's probably not skin, but like the leather of the book. So I even did that over the top of the spiders, and then I set that to one side to dry and worked on the next book. So the next book is going to be spells, and I decided just to use my glue gun to trace the letters. You can't really see them coming out here, you'll see them a bit more once the glue has dried. But yeah, I just worked my way across writing out the word spells, and I did consider die cutting some letters out of like craft foam and using that, but then I thought the edges would be a little bit too neat for what I was after. I then added some decorative lines to the edges. You see these often on books. I don't know if they have an actual name, but I decided to add those little decorative lines. And then I have this small pumpkin wooden piece that I thought would just add a little something extra. I wasn't happy with how the letter P looked, so I went ahead and peeled that off. And that's really great about this glue. If you mess it up, once it's completely dry, you can peel it off. Any hot glue, you can peel it away from this. It may tear some of the tissue paper. However, you can just go ahead and add another layer and it'll be fine. So once I was happy with how this one looked, you can guess what I did. I mean, you can see it on screen right now. I went ahead and added another layer of tissue paper. And then for my final book, I spelt out the word curses. And I left the side of this one pretty plain because I am going to stand this book up so you can see the eye and see the front of it. So I just spelt out the word curses and then added a star at the end. I didn't really like how that turned out, so I peeled it away and left that off. So now for decorating the front of this book a little more, I decided to add a spider web in the corner. This is so easy to do. You just do a couple lines. I like the one in the middle to be a little longer, and then you just add some little swoops, almost festive swoops, in between each of those, and it creates a perfectly spooky spider web. I also picked up a key just out of a random collection of keys that I have, and I added that. You'll see that in a minute. And I added just a little bit more of the glue kind of texture along the edges. For this part, I drew a straight line and then covered that straight line in squiggles. I wasn't really working off a plan. I think I was subconsciously inspired by the Hocus Pocus book that definitely has those kind of like squiggles along the side, and it also has an eye, but it's a little different to this. And then I added a line at the top and a couple dots of glue. You could have some fun looking around your house, seeing what you have that might add some cool texture and dimension, and just go ahead and add it in there. And then I'm going to grab that key. I love this key. I'm not sure where I got it from, but I have a whole bunch of these vintage keys. I probably picked them up off eBay or something. And then I attempted to freehand what I believe is the symbol for goddess. But you'll see at the end it looks a little bit like the word doc by mistake, which is actually my partner's initials, DOC. So who knows, maybe it was on purpose. You saw me just peel away that star that I didn't like and cover it again with tissue paper. And then it's time to spray paint the books. So I used my matte black spray paint and worked outside with newspaper just covering the pages inside to protect them as much as possible. And I spray painted all 3 sides of the books and let that dry completely. Now, for the eye, I was careful not to get too close because I didn't want to cover it in black. It does get a little bit of overspray on it, but it just adds to the look that we'd be after. So here's the 3 books once they dried. I knew I'd have to do a second coat, but I decided to use my black chalkboard paint because I prefer the super matte look of that. Whereas the spray paint, even though it says it's matte, was a little glossy. And look how cool that looks once that paint's dried. It's definitely going to fit in a lot better with that chalkboard paint. I'm really pleased with how that turned out. So because it's so matte, we lose a little bit of the detail. So I decided to take a dry paintbrush and add on just the smallest amount of this copper distress paint. I'll have that linked below. Sorry, I think I've said that like a million times. But I'll try and link that below, or at least include the name of the paint. And I'm just going to go ahead and add that to kind of bring forward the texture and help that to really kind of pop on these books. I'm making sure to blend it out as much as possible and just using the smallest amount of paint because I don't want this to look like glam and shiny. I mean, maybe you do that. Maybe that's the kind of witch you want to represent. But for me, I want it to be like really dark and spooky. If it got too bright in any places, I just went ahead and dabbed on some more of that black chalkboard paint. You can't really go wrong. If you don't like it, you haven't finished. So I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing to all 3 books. I concentrated on the spines for my 2 books that are going to be laying down, and then for that book with the eye, the curses spell book that's going to be facing forward, I also decorated the front and the back with this paint. So there you have it. That is our 3 spell books completely finished. Love how they turned out. I think the combination of that matte black and then that little pop of kind of the antiqued bronze colour just to make the dimensions stand out. I think it looks really great. You can kind of see that goddess symbol. I didn't want to use anything too dark, but unfortunately it just looks like it says doc to me now. I can't see past it, but there we go. I'm sure nobody else would have noticed if I hadn't have mentioned it. So there are the books in my Halloween display. Do make sure you come back for video 3 where we'll make the cauldron and the bubbling potion. Thank you so much for joining me and sticking around until the end. Do make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope to see you back here again soon. Bye for now.